Hello, everyone. Dr. Anna Cabeca here. And today we're really going to talk about boosting our immune system. And I want to introduce to you this really special superstar in the space, although she didn't intend to be, and she comes to us with a great amount of humility. I want to introduce you to Dr. Terry Wahls. She is the author of the Wahls Protocol, subtitle, How I Beat Progressive MS, Multiple Sclerosis, Using Paleo Principles in Functional Medicine. And she's also author of this awesome cookbook called the Wahls Protocol Cooking for Life. So the revolutionary modern paleo plan to treat all chronic autoimmune conditions. So I'm really thrilled, and this is such a great resource, y'all. So I want to introduce her to you and have her share her story with you. She is a clinical professor of medicine at the University of Iowa. She is just an impactful woman and someone that I have admired from afar for years. So again, I'm in superstar mode right now, just like so pleased to be interviewing you here. Dr. Wahls, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been an amazing journey. It just has been such a wild, exciting ride.
So tell us about your story.
Sure. So I'm an academic internal medicine doc, which means I'm at a university. And I, like many academic internal medicine docs, really believed in the newest drugs, latest technology. I was very skeptical of vitamins, supplements, special diets. I thought it was all a bunch of foo-foo and didn't understand why patients wasted billions and billions of dollars every year on this. But God works in mysterious ways. In 2000, I was diagnosed with relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis. And I believed in the newest drugs, latest technology. And so I wanted to see the best MS center in the country. And that was the Cleveland Clinic. I went and saw their best people, took the newest drugs. And in the next 3 years, I had one episode of weakness involving my right arm. So had I been in a drug trial, that would have been a huge, huge success. But the problem was I was going steadily downhill. And by the end of 3 years, I needed a recline wheelchair. And it was time that converted to progressive MS. And I started chemotherapy. Now, my neurology physicians at the Cleveland Clinic had also told me about the paleo diet and the work of Lauren Cordain. And so I read his papers, read his books, and after a lot of prayer and meditation, after 20 years of being a vegetarian, I went back to eating meat. But I continued to decline, get worse, needed the wheelchair, needed the chemotherapy, continued to decline. And it was like, the best conventional medicine was not stopping this march towards becoming bedridden, potentially becoming demented, and having more and more refractory MS-related pain. And so I started reading the basic science about the animal models of MS, Parkinson's, Lou Gehrig's disease, Alzheimer's, Huntington's, decided mitochondria were key, and started using vitamin supplements, which slowed my decline, but did not stop it. So by the summer of 2007, I could not sit up anymore. Longer than 10 minutes, I'd be completely exhausted. It was a struggle to walk 10 feet using 2 walking sticks. I was beginning to have brain fog. Pain was getting more and more difficult to manage. And that's when I discovered the Institute for Functional Medicine and took their course on neuroprotection in the midst of my brain fog. So it was really quite challenging. Had a longer list of vitamins and supplements, which I added. Not a lot was changing yet, but then I had a really big, I should take this list of nutrients and redesign my diet to stress those nutrients. And so again, thanks to the Linus Pauling Micronutrient Center, I was able to do that. And so it's still a paleo diet. I'd still no grains, no legumes, no dairy, but now it's very, very structured. And it was stunning. In 3 months, my fatigue was gone. My brain fog was gone. In 6 months, I'm out of the wheelchair walking around with a cane. In 9 months, I get on my bike and I pedal around the block. I'm crying, my wife's crying, because with progressive MS, everyone had told me, all of my neurologists have said, functions once lost are gone forever. So I had no hope of recovery. And here I was biking again. And at a year, I did a 20-mile bike ride. So this really transforms how I practice medicine, how I think. My chair of medicine calls me and says, this is just so phenomenal, and you get a case report written, which we did with my treating team. Then he calls me back and says, I need you to do shift your research program. And he helped me get the mentors on board. So we did a study, and we got that published, and that launched a new focus. So it's just been a dramatic and totally unexpected direction that my life has taken.
That is beautiful. It's a beautiful story. And to see you now, it's hard to believe, but definitely I've seen the pictures of you in the wheelchair and just looked like you were in pain, chronic pain, and just
it was
losing it.
very difficult. And, you know, there are very few pictures of me in the wheelchair because I, you know, apparently did not like being photographed. So I have about 5, and they're precious.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. So one thing that you mentioned in talking about is boosting the internal will. So what got your internal will? I mean, balking everything we've spent, right? Hundreds of $1,000s in our education and our pharma and all this stuff. I mean, you had something in your internal will that committed you to this.
So the first thing, there's a book that I read that I really, really love, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And he's a Auschwitz survivor, a psychiatrist who writes about having seen tremendous acts of cruelty through the war, World War II. But he also saw these tremendous acts of love and devotion. And his premise was, all sorts of bad things happen in our life. All sorts of stuff will happen. And there's always a space between what happens to you and your choice, what it is that you will do. And so, you know, I had 2 young kids, 8 and 5. And so my mantra every day as I was actually, because I continued to work out every day as I kept getting littler and littler and littler and littler, what I could do was, your kids are watching. Are you going to model giving up? Are you going to model getting up, going on, no matter how difficult life is? And so I was going to model that you do the best you can no matter what happens. And you stay positive no matter what happens. Because that's the only thing I could control was my choice and my attitude. And that I could find joy in my life, however difficult it was. And so, you know, as I got more and more disabled, I still could find joy snugly in bed with my daughter, helping her memorize her lines for the next play that she was in, or drawing with my kids, or sitting out there in the garden and helping my family decide how they're going to organize what was being planted that year. So it's still things that I could enjoy, still things that I could do. And then, of course, the other thing I had to do was I had to make sure I was trying everything that I could to slow my decline. I knew I couldn't get better, but I could perhaps slow the decline. And so I did all of that, not to get better, because I knew that was impossible, but I thought maybe I could slow the speed of my decline.
Wow, and you made the impossible possible.
I had no idea.
Wow, that's awesome. That really is so touching. I love what you've said. And then to find joy in wherever you are. I like that you're that concept, I think, too, in whatever we're facing in our life. Like, what are we modeling? Are we modeling joy? Are we modeling struggle and worry? Are we modeling giving up? Are we modeling, no matter what, persevere, be patient, persist, keep looking for answers? And you modeled all of that. And that is tremendous.
In that you can still find joy and pleasure, whatever your circumstance is. You can still model the fact that there is stuff to be joyful about in your life, whatever your circumstances are.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So tell us, like, how has this now, tell us what you're doing in your world now as a result of your Revive. Like, what's your clinic like now? And
so, very exciting, just stunning stuff. So I kept writing grants. I was doing little pilot studies. These grants would go off to get reviewed. They'd get, ripped to shreds. People would say that I had no idea what the pathophysiology of MS was, et cetera. But I kept writing my grants. I kept doing my pilot studies. We had more and more impressive pilot data. And ultimately, we got funded. We got funded by the National Multiple Sclerosis Society with a the largest award that they've given to a clinical trial, I believe, today, test our study diet and compare it to the Swank diet and compare both diets to an observation period. And we'll have over 100 patients in that. So that's a very exciting study. And it also means that we had to go through peer review, and we finally had enough compelling data that even my skeptic physician scientist colleague said, this study will probably work, and therefore we should invest sizable resources behind it. The other thing that I do, I present our research, I give lectures around the university. And this year, the department, actually it was last year, the Department of Neurology has given me a secondary appointment. The College of Public Health has given me a secondary appointment there as well. The department that teaches the physical therapist are talking with me, asking me would I be willing to take a secondary appointment for them. So, I mean, and the fun thing about this, when I first started having these conversations about diet and lifestyle being so powerful for neurodegeneration, people didn't know what to make of it. I had intense criticism. So that was 10 years ago. Now, 10 years later, I have international recognition. We're funded research by the MS Society, and here at the university, more departments and colleges are asking me to lecture their students and to accept secondary appointments. So wonderful things are happening. And it's, of course, lots of fun to watch and do my research. And then we have public outreach for the public, and a very small private practice that I do, because I want to continue to have a little bit of private practice as well.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's expansive. Your world has become so expansive, as well as your influence. So it's exciting. I'd love for you to share with us some of the pearls of your dietary plan, like the reason behind no grains, no legumes at all.
So this has to do with something called lectins. Lectins are proteins that have a sugar side chain to them. They're very common in parts of the plant world and a little bit of the animal world as well. And you might think of this as the poison that organism creates to kill off other organisms that are trying to eat it. So in the plant world, that means they'll put it in the nuts and seeds. So grains, legumes have a lot of these lectins. And depending on your genetic vulnerability, these lectins can be just a little bit annoying to you or very, very annoying to your immune cells and cause this aggressive response. So if you have an autoimmune condition, you're more likely to have this aggressive response, particularly to wheat and the gluten-containing grains. So that's why I really stress being gluten-free. In our research, because I want people to have the best chance to do well in our diet, we grain-free, legume-free, and dairy-free. I allow people to have clarified butter, but all of that is to reduce the lectin exposure. In addition, I recommend taking out nightshades, because they also have a lot of lectins in them, and that would be the potatoes, tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants. In my book, for the public, I do this in a staged fashion, so there's really 4 variations of my diet in the book, where you steadily reduce the amount of lectins. And I also provide a ketogenic option as well, because there's a lot of benefit for ketosis. In general, you can't just leap into this kind of very restrictive diet without a lot of support and guidance, which is why in my book, I have much more of the public health perspective and give people guidance how to just gradually reduce their lectins and ease into this more nutrient-dense diet.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Like, can you give us a day in your life, a day in the life of like that key transition, your best day, your best dietary nutrition?
Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 days. So the first day is sort of a level 1. Let's just sort of get started with the program. And so for that, you're going to get rid of gluten grains. If you want to be vegetarian, I still give you some guidance on how to do that. And we ramp the day up. So you might have a big green smoothie in the morning and have some protein. perhaps collagen that you've put in that smoothie. Very fast, very easy. And then because you're busy, you make a big batch of the smoothie, so you can take half the smoothie with you to have for your midday snack. And you might take some sprouted nuts with you as well, or perhaps if you're a meat eater, a meat bar as well. So that's a very nice way to have a fast, easy go-to meal for breakfast and for lunch. Then you come home and have a humongous salad, and you're going to have your complete protein. If you're a meat eater, that's meat. If you're a vegetarian, I give people some vegetarian guidance. And then we'll want you to have, as I said, a lot of greens, a lot of sulfur-containing vegetables in the cabbage, onion, mushroom family. And then I want you to have something that's really brightly colored as well. Beets, carrots, berries, and all of that. And then because people want to have some sort of yummy kind of dessert, I suggest that they make something like chia seed pudding. So coconut milk, chia seed, and you've mixed that together. You want that to soak at least 6 hours so you can germinate the seeds, which will decrease those lectins. This will be less irritating to your immune cells. And so that'll make a very lovely dessert, particularly if you have a few berries or fruit with it. So you get to have something that feels sweet and luxurious, but you've been eating food that really nourishes your brain, your cells all day long.
Can we have dark chocolate on top of that
really
chia seed pudding?
The great dark chocolate on top, that's just fabulous. Or put some cacao nibs on top.
Have to have that. Oh, yes.
Very, very nice. Or you could add cocoa and cinnamon to your chia seed pudding and have it's sort of a chocolate mousse kind of thing. Also, very, very lovely. Now, so I'm 17 years into this. I've been working on my diet and lifestyle over the 17 years. What does my day look like today? So I get up this morning, and I typically get up between 4 and 5 when I wake up, so that I go meditate. Then I will have some mat exercises I do for my physical therapist. I go downstairs, invert on my inversion table with some positive affirmations while I'm doing that. Then I go to my vibrating platform exercise and do more strength training exercises. Then I come back up, I do some more balance training exercises. I make my tea. That's brewing. I have a few vitamins and supplements that I take with my green tea. I'll open up my pool. I jump in my pool. Actually, I get in my endless pool. I'll swim and do my aquatic exercises. It's not long, maybe 10, 15 minutes. Then I get into my sauna, and I read for 20 minutes. Right now I'm reading Thieves of State, really a very compelling book. And then after 20 minutes, I'm beginning to sweat, so I don't want to drip all over my book. I have to take that out. Then I continue my sauna for another hour. And while I'm in my sauna, I'm doing isometric and range of motion exercises within the sauna. Within the sauna, I change positions every 10 minutes while I'm doing a variety of stuff. I get out of the sauna, I take a shower. I do my cognitive training, and that's what I was doing this morning. I do cognitive training for 10 to 30 minutes, depending on what's going on. And all of that will take me 3 to 3.5 hours. And then I go off to work. I'll drink filtered water during the day. And then in the evening, I'll come home and I'll make dinner. We'll have a huge salad or cooked greens. I will have sulfur-containing vegetables. I really love black fermented garlic. It's just like, oh my God, that is so yummy. Right now, we have a lot of Brussels sprouts and cranberries and bacon. That is so yummy. So that's my sulfur-containing vegetables and the fermented black garlic and cranberries. That is just incredibly yummy, delicious. My family loves that. And we had some brats that our local butcher makes that doesn't have any, problem stuff in it. So we'll have those as well. And then I use phosphatidylcholine and some omega-3, omega-6 fats that I blend to make a little smoothie. I add some inulin powder, and I'll probably blend all that with some cocoa and cinnamon, make sort of a little chocolate mousse. And then I put some aronia, which are like black currants, in all of that. So now it's a purple chocolate mousse. And then I put some frozen blackberries or raspberries or cherries or blueberries on top of all of that, put it in the refrigerator. That's my little dessert treat after the evening. All this together is probably 40 to 50 carbohydrates, grams of carbs. So it's the ketogenic diet that I'm following. And I do that during the winter. During the summer, it'll be more of a moderate carbohydrate. So I'll go slightly out of ketosis, still very low glycemic index. And then back winter, next fall, I'll be back in ketosis. And so it really is seasonal ketosis. And I spend 2 to 4 hours in this self-care every day. But now that I do that, I sleep much better. I'm much more productive at work. I had my meeting with my chair, my division chief, and he was talking about how productive I've been with all the manuscripts that we've gotten published, the lecture I'm doing around the world, and the research. And you're only working half time. I know you've got your private practice and your seminar. How do you do it all? I said, well, this is since I figured out that in order to do well, I have to spend all this time taking care of myself. What I discovered is I'm vastly more effective at all the other times if I attend to all this meditation, exercise, e-stim, sign. I'm happier and more effective.
That's huge. That's self-care. And that's just such a message for our listeners, is that self-care and the right self-care, right? That empowerment, the way I love what you do. I mean, definitely you're preaching my Bible too. I mean, this is like so in line with what I call a keto alkaline lifestyle. I mean, you've got the blend of everything, especially all those good cruciferous vegetables and the nutrients, but yet the positive, like disciplining your mind, directed to where it should go, right? Disciplining your mind and taking care of your body, giving it what it needs and not relinquishing on that. So when you are so busy and you're traveling, how do you maintain that self-care?
Well, when I was flying a lot, I was having more problems with pain, a lot more problems with pain. I was like, maybe I'm going to have to cut out this traveling. Now, fortunately, I go to my own personal functional medicine doc, and I was talking with Julia about this. And she said, I bet it's the jet fuel and the increased radiation from all the altitude. So let's revisit some of your detox strategies. So I did that, which is also part of why I'm very committed to this hour sauna that I do every day. And that really made a phenomenal difference.
Is it an infrared sauna?
Yeah, near infrared sauna. And so that's been helpful. I have a little different detox regimen that I do when I'm traveling and when I'm home. And so I may not get my 3-hour usual ritual in, but I still wake up early between 4 and 5. Now, usually Central Time, so that is a little bit of a time issue. If I'm going to the West Coast or the East Coast, I have to sort of deal with that. And then I'll do my mat exercises, etc. And I'll do an Epsom salts bath instead of a sauna. But I still get up early. I still do the meditation. There's a lot of my exercises I can do in the hotel room, so that's not a problem. Instead of doing a sauna, I do an Epsom salts bath. So I carry that with me. And I have a more intensive detox regimen that I do when flying is involved.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I was like big on iodine and vitamin C when we fly too, but just keeping that extra care. That's so, adding into phase 2 detoxifying support. What are the things that you're adding?
So I'm eating a lot of cabbage as I fly. I take more algae while I fly. I take more N-acetylcysteine while I fly. And I have upped up I've monitored my iodine status with iodine load status. And so I make sure that I keep my iodine replete because I swim a lot. So
Chlorine.
yeah,
Yeah.
I have to monitor that and make sure I'm keeping my iodine up.
Yeah, good points. Those are big, really big factors that make a difference in the long haul. Now, with you had suffered from multiple sclerosis, but the Wahls protocol is good for all of us and any reason, but
Yes,
definitely other autoimmune diseases.
correct.
As you gave through your list of the day, do you also like? I'd love to touch on vitamin D supplementation and estriol. The
Oh yeah, yeah. So um,
estriol. I don't know if you
oh
use
yeah, yeah.
that or okay.
So well, we'll talk first about vitamin D. I think vitamin D is so helpful in terms of epigenetic influence, in terms of activating antimicrobial peptides, and it will help you absorb more calcium. But you also have to be very careful about vitamin K2. So when you
Yes.
absorb that calcium, it gets into your teeth and bones and not into your heart valves and blood vessels.
Or
So
breast
that
tissue.
that's right, breast tissue.
Yes.
So you'll get ectopic calcium if you don't have enough vitamin K2. So where do you get vitamin K2? Tons and tons of greens, and then your bacteria will convert it to K2 and you'll absorb it. You can also get it from organic clarified butter, from liver, from grass-fed animals. And so that is vital, vital. You have to get lots of K2. And then you can talk about should you take K2 supplements with your vitamin D, and that's a conversation to have with your practitioner. It's also really, really important to monitor your vitamin D levels. Now, the research would say giving supplemental vitamin D has not been helpful. Of course, most of those studies never bothered to monitor the levels. So they didn't know if 400 units or 800 units or 1,000 units was enough. In the studies that monitor the levels, you get favorable outcomes. And the other thing that my other problem I have with a lot of the vitamin D research is they didn't know how to monitor vitamin K2 intake or vitamin K2 levels. So in our study, we monitor vitamin D, we monitor K2 levels, we monitor vitamin K intake. So we're going to be able to report on all that stuff. It'll be very, very nice. Now, there was another part of this question. I already forgot what it was. What was the second part?
About estriol.
Oh, estriol. So in the MS world, we're certainly aware that the hormonal shifts during pregnancy appear to shift our immune response and decrease the pro-inflammatory state and quiet MS and quiet many, many autoimmune conditions. Now, there have been a couple of very interesting studies using estriol at doses ranging from 2 milligrams to 8 milligrams, and they used it as an add-on to conventional disease-modifying drugs. And they saw that if you use the estriol as an add-on, you have fewer relapses. So in Europe, there's more use for estriol. Certainly some of the functional medicine docs, the anti-aging docs will be very keen on estriol, and we'll talk with people about using estriol either as a cream where you can absorb it through the skin or the vaginal mucosa, or as a troche that you can hold in your mouth, let dissolve. And yes, I'm also use estriol personally. Now, has it made a difference for me? No. I turned off my disease very effectively using the Wahls protocol. And if I go to your house, Anna, and you accidentally serve me stuff that has gluten in it, I will have incapacitating face pain, usually in 6 to 24 hours, that I will have to take high-dose steroids to turn off or go take Cyumedrol to turn off. So I have over the years learned to be very, very assertive and clear on I can't have any gluten, I can't have any dairy. And if I'm accidentally served that, I'll be in the hospital with refractory pain. So what's safe to eat? And then I offer to bring food to my guests to make it easier for them. And I'm also perfectly fine bringing my own coconut milk and tea and just having coconut milk and tea while I watch everyone else eat rather than risk having my pain turn on.
Wow, man, that's so amazing. And that, it would be so nice to say, okay, well, we can do this for a certain amount of time and then we're back to incorporating other things. But it's a hard no, it's a hard line. I mean, that's it. You
Correct.
can't cross it. And that's
Correct.
something to learn.
So if you've made some hummus for me, which I generally don't normally eat, but you've made some hummus because it's gluten-free. Yes, I can, there are foods that I will occasionally have. One of my Jordanian friends made a very delicious eggplant meal, and I love eggplant. And so I had a small amount of it. I can do that on occasion. I can't have tomatoes every day. That'll turn on my pain. I have eggplant every day. That'll turn on my pain. But if I have a small amount very sporadically, I do fine. A tiny amount of gluten, I'll be incapacitated.
Amazing.
And I'm really quite grateful that I have that that marker now. My pain, which had been so horrific for so long, has now become my friend because it tells me like something's not right. You got to think deeply, figure out what it was, and get it fixed.
Yeah, no, that said so beautifully because it's so interesting that we can eat like dairy is a huge sensitivity for me, so I get it. But we can go, we can live our life eating gluten and dairy and just slowly, be numb to the effects until there's diseases, diagnosis, etc. And then all of a sudden we clean that up. That's why my patients, when we detox them, and then they go back to eating something that they used to love and eat all the time. Like, it never bothered me before. Now it bothers me. What did you do to me? So it's your body is alerting you that this is a problem and it's going to cause devastation. And it's creating this huge inflammatory cascade. How do you explain it?
Well, I explained that when they were dying slowly, they had accommodated to that dying slowly and just thought that was part of life. Now that that inflammatory cascade is going off and they realize all this damage that's happening in their brain and in their cells, now this is jarring to their system. And so they can decide, do you want to go back to that and go back to that slowly dying? Or do you want to have your cells functioning as optimally as possible? And I try to remind everyone, this is a choice. You can choose what you're going to eat, how you're going to deal with this, and it's not up to me. It's entirely up to you.
Yeah, I love it. And then just working to eliminate it completely and then be able to see what works, what doesn't work back with you.
The other thing I've learned to remind people is that we are so addicted to these sweet foods, the gluten, the dairy, for a variety of reasons. So as the longer we are away from them, and we'll begin to forget how sick we were, and the world will keep trying to convince you that an occasional extravagance, an occasional thing will be okay. And depending on your physiology and your genetics, it might be right that an occasional thing will be okay. But for the vast majority of folks, it will not be. And what you'll be setting up is this slow death again. And if you're fortunate, if you're incredibly fortunate, you'll have acute symptoms that make you miserable. And so you'll get like, I can't do that because it's making me miserable. And my two kids, one child has acute problems with severe headaches. And so she doesn't have problems with dairy, but has severe headaches if she does any gluten. So she's figured out how to be completely gluten-free through college, after college, living with roommates, and she stays gluten-free. My son was gluten-free for a while. His acne went away, his asthma went away, his migraines went away, and then he was gluten-free, dairy-free, I think, for a couple years. Then gradually put things back in, and you could see the acne come up a little bit on his forehead. The asthma comes a little bit, but he doesn't have headaches. So these things are relatively mild, and he can sort of titrate on and off. And so they have the same genes. making different decisions, and we'll see how it works out for them long term. It is far, and my son makes the comment, it'd be far, far easier if he had an acute symptom. And he's made the comment that to his sister that, I know you don't like having the migraines, but in the end, you're probably better served than I am. My forehead is so mild that he's just not as diligent on his dietary choices.
I love that. I love that example. So also with genetic testing, is there a way to find out if you can have leptins or not have leptins other than, the elimination approach?
The gold standard is doing the elimination diet and having the lectin-rich food out for 6 months and then reintroducing it one ingredient at a time, one ingredient per week. Clearly the gold standard. There are no blood tests that tell you about lectins. There are some blood tests for specific food proteins. The problem with these tests is they're not, there's no national standard. They're not uniform. So we don't really know what they will mean. You can get tests for IgG or adaptive antibodies. You can get tests for innate immune response, that is cell lysis. Nothing that combines both. And because we don't have a national standard on the antigens, it can be very difficult to know what they mean. So yes, they could be helpful. Yes, I did use these tests to convince my kids that I think you do have both some gluten sensitivity issues, and that was helpful for that. In my clinical practice at the VA and in my clinical practice now, I use 0 blood tests. I use the elimination diet and explain that's the gold standard. If you want to work with me, that's what I use. If you're not ready to do that, that's fine. You can go work with someone else.
Yeah, no, I like that because too, it's that discipline and practice, and nothing beats, being off it completely. Yeah. And then reintroducing it. Right. And then you're like, oh, heck no, I can never have that again. I mean, it's so interesting. It's so shocking. So the microbiome is a huge, topic right now. How does the Wahls protocol influence the microbiome? And I'd love to touch on that.
I am so excited about that. So there's more and more evidence that our microbes in our gut are a huge, huge impact on helping us run the chemistry of life. And so if thousands of generations ago, a genetic mutation came up so I couldn't do a biochemical process XYZ, but my microbes could, we still had reproductive success. And at that moment, that the genes that manage the the biochemical process for XYZ got passed on from my genes to my microbes. So they're critical for how our brains work, our immune cells work, how our hormonal balancing works. We are increasingly recognize that the food we eat will determine which microbes are there. And if we may be missing some key biochemical steps if we don't have a diverse enough microbial population. Now you could go to pubmed.gov, type in the name of your disease that you're worried about and the microbiome, and you'll probably get a lot of hits now. And it's a lot of recognition that the microbes are different between healthy people and people with your disease. We don't quite know what to make of that other than to say they're really, really important. And I think there are 6 studies now that document in the setting of MS that the microbes are very, very different. And I am incredibly excited because we've recruited one of those scientists to work on our study. And we are, because I have some internal funding from philanthropists, we've been able to collect microbiome specimens in our clinical trial during the observation period, 2 specimens, and 2 specimens during the intervention periods. So we'll be able to see how the microbes change, and we'll also be able to see the metabolic function of those microbes. So stay tuned.
That is so cool.
Write about them.
Yeah, that is so cool. Because if you look at, like, I would just imagine in your back in 2000 in your worst disease state, that from there to what your microbiome was to what it is now, just the tremendous shift. It's so cool to be able to test that now and to actually be
Yes.
able to have studies that are going to show you this
What changes?
difference. What changes? Because it's got to be huge. It has to be huge.
And because we have not only are we doing this in the setting of MS, I have another basic science collaborator who is studying this in healthy controls, and I'm meeting with more basic scientist collaborators here at the university, and we're developing a mouse model to study the effect of diet on MS. The low saturated fat diet, the conventional American diet, and our steady diet, Wahls steady diet. So we'll be running those experiments this summer. Again, very exciting stuff. And this is how practice standards change, is to do the clinical trials. And now, because I'm so persistent, the basic scientists here at the University of Iowa are asking for meetings with me to talk about how we design basic science studies to understand the mechanisms by which diet and lifestyle are so impactful. It's a very exciting time. It's hard to sleep at night. I have to really work at meditating, getting everything turned off and quiet. But I'm excited because now I figured out that it's so important to do all those things. I spend a lot more time with self-care in the morning and in the evening to do those things.
I love it. Yeah, thank you. Well, how can people see you? Tell them where they can find your stuff. I know that your book is available on Amazon. I want to show people, the Wahls Protocol, Cooking for Life, and your first book is the Wahls Protocol. I love this one because I'm always looking at new recipes and great ideas.
So first off, let's have them go to terrywahls.com, T-E-R-Y, walls.com. And on the resource pages, you can hear information about who's been certified as a health professional. You'll also see that we have a seminar coming up that we do every August for patients, and we also invite clinicians to come and spend an extra session with us to go through the case-based learning, take the exam so we can get them certified. And we have a page where you can register to be on the waiting list to get into the private practice with me as well. And I certainly want everyone to sign up for the emails so you can hear announcements when we're doing a webinar and talking about with other functional medicine practitioners. We have that once a month, and so being on the email, you'll get to hear about that.
Good, great, excellent. So, so the terrywahls.com, TRRWAHLS, and we'll put a link in the show notes. So, Terry, let's conclude with telling our viewers what are 3 things they can do right now that would make a difference in their life.
Number 1, replace the sugar and grains with more non-starchy vegetables. Number 2, take some time to reflect on for what you are grateful every day. Some gratitude. Number 3, do some movement, whether it is stretching, strength training, balance training every day. And even if it's just 60 seconds, stay your back in the corner, practicing standing on one leg or closing your eyes, that will be invaluable.
I agree. Great tips. Thank you so much. I feel I've met a kindred spirit in you, and I thank you for spending your time with me today and all our listeners and sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure.
Thank you. And for our listeners, please share this. You can download it also on iTunes, on YouTube, as well as on our social media, drAnnaCabeca.com. Please share it with your friends and colleagues. There's so many good pearls. I've written 3 pages of notes just listening to you. I love your one-offs too, your pearls of wisdom. Thank you so much again.
You're very welcome.